We're back. We had our little La La Land Moonlight moment just there. But we're back. This is the real thing. I'm Warren Beatty. This is Faye Dunaway.
Oh, jeez.
No,
That's
JK.
rude.
We're back.
I don't
Let's talk
accept.
about the Oscars, though. We just got through this 4-hour show. We just got through multiple months of prognostications, of predictions. And we get to the end, and it's Shape of Water, which is not what you thought it was going to be. Not to put you on the spot, but it's not what you thought it was going to be.
You're really dragging me over the coals now.
Well,
I was a Shape of Water person for 5 weeks, certain, and then I had people in my ear the last 2 days before, and they convinced me that a Get Out moment was going to happen.
Was the person in your ears, did the name rhyme with Norden Neal?
No. I was not talking to anybody from the Get Out camp, but I maybe it was just a wish upon wish. I was hoping that that's what would happen.
We're going to get to all of it. We're going to talk about what stood out. We're going to talk about what we were displeased by. We'll do some superlatives. We'll talk about next year even. If you have questions for us, if you want to ask us some questions, if you have any comments, it's #RingOurOscars. Greenwald, you're chomping at the bit because I know you're flying overhead and you've got the perspective.
That's me, man.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah.
Just dropping DDT
Chuck
on all the
Yeager.
crops.
That's right.
I think that most award shows in our collective memory are nights in search of a narrative. And for 4 hours tonight, this was a narrative in search of a night. I think the stronger moments were Jimmy Kimmel's speech, the moment with Annabelle Sciorra and Mira Sorvino and Salma Hayek was there.
Yeah, Ashley Judd.
And yet, while these very interesting, very overdue statements of solidarity and inclusion were being expressed from the stage, there was a parade of relatively staid and boring winners, frankly. Not just boring because we can get into whether people deserved it or not, but these were winners that had been winning all award season long.
Yes.
And then we got to Frances McDormand's speech. Obviously, you guys know, and everyone watching at home knows, not a fan of that film.
Right.
But was a fan of her speech, and that felt like the summation, that felt like what the night had been building to, and it was interesting to read that while she had all the female nominees stand up, people who were in the room, like New York Times reporter Jodie Cantor said, the most striking thing about that was how few people were standing up.
Sure.
And then we have this moment of sort of transcendence and unity between everything that had been happening all night, and then Shape of Water wins. And we were reminded that when it comes to, at the end of the day, if you really want to succeed in Hollywood, you gotta fuck a fish.
You can't really blame. I mean, like, the people in that room voted for that movie. I mean, this is ultimately right. I mean, like,
certainly enough people. I mean, once again, it's a Bill Simmons axiom, but like, show us the votes. Like, I really want to see the votes this year. I would be fascinated to know what the percentages were because it felt very razor thin through the whole race. And this was sort of the least fun outcome, right? This was the one that was the most blah.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of narrative to build around, like Andy said, so that's unfortunate.
It felt like sort of when Jordan Peele won that best screenplay, we had talked about in the pre-show that could indicate that Get Out might go on a little bit of a run, but in the end it feels like that's like in the past when, say, a Tarantino or Matt and Ben won for Good Will Hunting, it was kind of like, nice job, kid, like,
but also
get him next time.
Welcome to the club.
And welcome to the club.
Absolutely.
For you, what stood out?
Well, certainly the Frances McDormand moment. And I was very much I thought Get Out was going to win. I thought that was trending for the ceremony, not just because of the Jordan Peele victory, but also because Shape of Water didn't win all the technical categories. It was nominated 13 times, and like Dunkirk was definitely in there. My ballot was doing great. The first half, I was kind of like, oh, this is great. All my predictions are true.
And a silent sprinter, by the way, unlike Mr. Bragg's.
Yeah, well, but then he kind of took off, and
20 of 24.
Right, that's
but
great job.
But who's counting?
Right. And then it kind of turned into exactly what we have seen for the past 4 months. It was a long night. It was long and a long year. And there were no surprises. And that's why I have this in my hand right now.
They did. Jimmy did a bit in the middle, but typically what happens is like that the opening segment tends to be a lot more performative. There usually is a musical segment, or it's just like a much longer State of the Union. You could tell they were trying to gracefully kind of get through that State of the Union without upsetting anyone, which is good. For me, what stood out, I think, ultimately, I personally think that the Oscars, I saw Mark Harris talking about this, but the Oscars that I sort of like are the corny parts. It is the part that is like, movies are great. Here's a montage. I know you roll your eyes every time it comes through, but I like the montages. I like the in memoriam. I like the let's all give standing ovation to Rita Moreno or Christopher Walken. I appreciate the idea that this is part of a tradition that stretches back. It's the primary, like, pop culture export of the United States, and I think it's something to be proud of, ultimately. And I appreciate the recognition of the history and the way in which they can celebrate the technical awards and the craft awards that we're talking about and make it all feel like of a piece.
I agree with you very much when it comes to bringing people back and making it feel like this is part of a continuum very much a brotherhood for a long time, and now increasingly, thankfully, a sisterhood when you have Rita Moreno on stage, and you realize that there's a continuum.
A lot of West Side Story tonight.
Which I appreciate. The thing that I have trouble with, purely watching it as a TV show, is these montages to remind us that movies are great. When it's movies, you should act like you've been there before. You're there every year.
Yeah.
And then they just continue to do things like, well, let's have a montage of military moments with Demi Moore for front and center.
That's Lieutenant Commander Joe Galloway?
I apologize. I apologize to all the rewatchables heads in the room right now.
Justice for Joe, by the way.
I'm just saying that on a night that was already going to be challenging,
Sure.
to sort of lard it with a lot of the familiar beats felt safe to me and ultimately frustrating.
All right.
Here's my thing. The Oscars is 4 hours every year. There are montages every year. There are 2 or 3 musical performances that are boring every year.
It's true.
You have to, if we're going to do this show and
If we're
talk
gonna put
about
a
this
suit
stuff,
on, yeah.
you have to accept that.
So-
That part of it
refuse.
is out of our control because the show is not for hardcore cinephiles. The show is for America. Americans watch the show, so they want to give them as many things as possible that are pop.
America was watching Wrinkle in Time for free across the street.
That's true. That's true. Well, maybe
Were
you
they
would have
actually?
too.
Can I just add? A lot of people were concerned that
Yeah.
the Oscars got in the way of those people's
they ruined it
Wrinkle
for
in
them?
Time
Yeah.
experience, and I thought that it was just a setup.
Right.
Like, I mean, I don't know.
Are you,
think
are
they
you
were-
calling
Find out.
conspiracy?
Were they watching
Yeah.
the 20
I
still?
believe it.
Like, were they
I'm
just
fairly
learning about
certain that they will be like emotionally compensated by being in the same room as
I'm
as
sure
Gallagher
that they
and-
will
that-
get to see
that
a
was a-
Wrinkle in Time.
That was a bad bit.
All right, hashtag Ringer Oscars. If you have questions for us, if you have comments of your own about how the show went, we're going to talk about who had the best night. Obviously, we had some people who we were hoping to see more of out there. I think we all were pulling for Greta Gerwig. We were all pulling for more Get Out awards. But who had the best night?
I'm going to go with Tiffany Haddish and Maya Rudolph. A double whammy. Number one,
Strong
the
agree.
Maya Rudolph look, like if at some point in my life I can wear that dress and stand, and the earrings, I'm still
great.
thinking about it. That came right after the bit in which a theater of movie-going people were greeted by like Gal Gadot and Armie
and Hot
Hammer.
Dog Ken.
And Armie
Yeah,
Hammer
and
shooting
Armie
hot
Hammer,
dogs
which
at
like I'm not a reliable narrator on that, but
Armie Hammer shooting hot dogs is on.
it
the
went on
nose.
for a long time, and it was a rehash of a bit last year, and it did it lagged. And then you jump to Tiffany Haddish and Maya Rudolph, who had the most energy of basically
Great.
anyone on stage all night.
They
Were
smartly let
very
them give
funny.
away 2 awards
Yeah.
too.
I enjoyed that. I think there are many campaigns now for them to host Oscars, run for president, any number of things.
Star in a
I think the
PTA
world
movie,
is their
yeah.
oyster now. Yes,
Yeah.
and they will star in a PTA movie, which I'm looking forward to. So I'm going with that.
Okay, Sean, what about you? What was your best night?
I feel like a lot of people met Kumail Nanjiani tonight.
He did great.
He actually had a lot of really good moments. I mean, it's easy to say like Gary Oldman because Gary Oldman won Best Actor after a very impressive career, but we knew that was going to happen. We knew that was going to happen 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And so for me, it's always the Oscars are always about people like Tiffany Haddish kind of emerging, having a national moment. Kumail made a great movie in The Big Sick. He was nominated. He didn't have any chance to win, but in one of the montage segments and then also in his presentation segment, he was great. He was really funny. He was true to himself, and I can sense the text from my mom that's like, I really like that Kumail.
Yeah,
you know,
right.
like
Exactly.
it's coming.
Yeah.
Exactly. What do you think?
Kimmel. I thought Jimmy Kimmel was really excellent throughout the night. I think he had a very high degree of difficulty on this show, not only because the winners were apparently all foretold ahead of time, so there wasn't that energy to play off of, but also this was a very heavy moment in the industry, and he addressed it immediately, at length, with a seriousness that actually surprised me. But he managed to sort of lightly tap dance through a lot of minefields.
Yeah.
He went right at a lot of stuff right at the beginning. He said the president's name. He said Harvey Weinstein's name. He said what he wanted to say about those things, and then continued to host a very, well, I won't say the show was quick, but when he was on stage,
Yeah.
his jokes
He
were...
keeps it breezy. He keeps it light. He keeps it moving.
Very
Yeah.
fleet of foot.
It's an amazing... I was very impressed by it. It was woke Kimmel is one of the more impressive things to come out of the last 2 years in my mind.
For a movie that a lot of people had a lot of problems with, rightfully so, I really appreciated the speeches from Sam Rockwell and Frances McDormand. I
Yeah.
thought that they appropriately captured the once-in-a-lifetime feeling that it must be to win. You know, I thought I really was touched by Sam Rockwell shouting out Philip Seymour Hoffman at the end of his speech, and Frances McDormand. I often think about the Dallas Buyers Club run that Matthew McConaughey went on, where by the time he got to the
Yeah.
Oscars,
Yeah, he peaked too soon.
all right, and like all the stuff was just like so codified that we were like, yeah, this is just like
Yeah.
greatest hits. We're sitting here with the Hotel California, but Frances has been on the same kind of run. She's won almost every award that you can possibly win, and she got up there and had very timely references to Chloe Kim. She had us
Yes.
all
Good.
Googling
Yeah.
inclusion rider,
Yeah.
and she crushed it with the speech.
Should we
So-
explain that?
Yeah,
We've now
absolutely.
learned from
Yeah.
Twitter that this is basically saying that you would contractually obligate the people who are paying for the movie to hire a percentage of cast and crew that are people of color or female.
Yeah.
And that it is important for people with the power to do so to put it in writing, because the goodwill and just sort of backpatting and hoping that this changes has clearly not been enough.
Now, Andy, we've talked a little bit about our MVPs, but there was an MVP that rose out of social media tonight.
Oh boy.
Yes. Yes, there was.
Our buddy Sam Esmail did tweet at one point about the Kobe Bryant win. And,
Oh, dear.
And it was the guy Glenn. Well, I don't know what his last name was.
It really doesn't matter because he is.
Was it Glenn Ryan?
It's really just worth saying.
It's my looper, apparently.
If Logan went home empty-handed, but old man Logan Ryan, old man Chris, gray beard with adamantium claws. Can we throw that up there?
No way. What are we talking about here? Glasses?
Congrats to Kobe Bryant.
First of all,
and old Chris Ryan.
I
on the
didn't tell
roster.
you this at the time, but two of my best friends actually did text me, and
This is the
like,
new
that guy looks like
watch.
That's
Chris
our new
Ryan.
logo.
Yeah.
I think I'd come out
It's
on top.
really-
Of
Wait,
that.
is that a Photoshop of me into this guy's face?
No, that's the old guy.
That's really him.
Yeah.
It's
No, it's
amazing.
like you.
Chris, you just mistook the old filmmaker for yourself.
That was a great look by you. Now,
That's creepy as hell.
it's just two Philly natives hosting a podcast. It's terrific. It's a beautiful moment.
Bellissimo.
Congratulations.
Okay, thanks a lot, guys.
Wow.
Thanks, Sam. Let's talk a little bit about what people are saying on the social media. We
boy.
all love social media, and we got a couple of questions here.
Project the
Smurf
premise.
on Periscope wants to know who had the Dion Waiters Award. This is a Rewatchables Award. Sorry, Amanda.
Is this
For,
a heat check one?
It's a heat check acceptance
great.
speech. So who went beyond really what we expected from them?
I think there's two candidates for me.
Okay.
One is the fellow with the rolled up sleeves.
Yes.
And
That was
the,
right.
And the shell
Max
tops?
Headroom
Sure.
sunglasses and the Adidas sneakers. He seemed as if he had been having a good time before the ceremony. And then the second is Mark Bridges, who won for Best Costume Design
And rode off
very
on a
early
jet ski.
on,
Yeah.
sensed that the jet ski moment was
Yeah.
available to him, and got in there in 36 seconds.
Really smart. And was so efficient with his time that no one after him even attempted.
That's right.
No one made the play for it.
Also credit him for actually coming out on the jet ski at the end.
totally.
I'm not sure that I would have in that
Yes.
moment.
No, if you are a costume designer, you work
Yeah.
long hours, you work with your hands in a dark room, you don't get much glory. And if someone says, please ride this purple jet ski in
With
front
Helen
of
Mirren.
a billion people with Helen
Yeah.
Mirren, there is only one answer.
What do you think would have happened if Gary Oldman had just walked up on there and just been like jet ski and then walked off because he wanted to win it? And then Gary Oldman rode out during Shape of Water's moment on a jet ski
It
with
would have
Helen
been a better
Mirren.
speech.
Iconic.
So
That's what we needed.
I think we would have been talking about that a lot
Yeah.
more.
Yeah, a couple more comments from Facebook. Frankie Rodriguez on Facebook wants to know, is Kobe now the GOAT?
Nope.
What was Roger Sherman's tweet that we want to share with everybody?
He was the first winner of the...
He now owns. There's an EGOT, which means you're the winner of an Emmy, a
Yeah.
Grammy,
And Rita Moreno has
an
one.
Oscar, and a Tony. Rita Moreno famously is an owner of an EGOT. Roger thinks that there should be an LMFAO, which I believe is for the Larry O'Brien MVP trophy,
Yeah.
the MVP of the league, the
Oscar.
Keep
Finals
going.
MVP,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and the All-Star Game MVP, and an Oscar.
I think that's...
So the LMFAO is a new award, and now every basketball player has to try to get one.
Yeah.
Andy, John Poulis on Twitter wants to know, which award will we regret the fastest? So this is like,
Oh, I love this
looking
question.
back, there's regret and there's forget. And I think
Right.
it's important to distinguish between the two because I, with all due respect, do think we'll probably forget about Shape of Water in the years to come, and we'll remember some of the other movies here. But is there anyone in here who's just like, man, we're going to regret this one?
That's the one. I mean, I just think that this was a broad field, 9 nominees, and I think that other than 3 Billboards, which was an abomination, I think there were 8 movies that were fine, ranging from fine to truly great. And I think that Shape of Water is a very, very strange and very, very safe choice. As we said in the pre-show, it is essentially a movie about loving movies, which is probably why we all should have seen it coming a mile away, because those movies tend to win. But
Unless they're La La Land.
yeah,
unless
except for last
which
year.
which is gave us the shock on many levels that
Yeah.
we were still desperate. We were hoping would repeat itself
Right.
on some
Also,
level tonight.
let's remark upon how amazing, even more so, the Moonlight win is in the afterglow
Right.
of the Shape
So
of Water
if it's
win.
not actually this new
Absolutely.
shift, it's such an anomaly,
It's an
right?
incredible moment.
Right.
It's a 10x an incredible moment
Yeah.
in Oscar history.
What about you? What are we going to regret?
I don't think anyone's necessarily going to fully regret giving Sam Rockwell an Oscar, but I feel like he's in a movie that's coming out later this year called Backseat, that is about Dick Cheney, and he plays George W. Bush in this movie. It's directed by Adam McKay, and it feels like the movie that he should have won for already, even though I haven't seen it and don't really know anything about it.
Yeah.
And I can see a moment where, like, usually people tend to get Oscars for previous roles and in their makeups for something that happened. And I have this weird premonition that we're going to be like, he should have got it for this one, or maybe he'll get a second one for that one.
For you? Regrets?
I think we'll regret all the movies that were excellent this year that didn't win. Get Out only won one award. Lady Bird won none. Phantom Thread only won one for costume design. There were a lot. It was a really great movie year, and we all really enjoyed a lot of those movies. And for the most part, they went unrecognized, and that'll be a bummer, I think.
And I think it's also worth noting that of those finalists, I mean, I think Lady Bird is a close to perfect film that will launch a fantastic career. And I think that, Call Me By Your Name is a beautiful movie that was loved by many people. I think that Get Out is a phenomenon and a worthy phenomenon, and will be talked about for many years, and will be remembered as the movie of last year. And Phantom Thread, I think, is a masterpiece. So Shape of Water, it just...
I was playing around a little bit with this idea that if this is in fact Daniel Day-Lewis's last performance, and we look back in 10 years and it was just sort of like this Gary Oldman thing that was a layup for a Best Actor, or at least nomination, but we're going to look back at the performance that Daniel Day-Lewis gave in Phantom Thread and just be like, how are we even talking about this not getting a Best Actor?
Yeah.
It's not like he hasn't had his chance at awards. I think if I had a big regret, and we have a lot of people on social media sort of saying the same thing, it's just that Lady Bird was my favorite movie of the year, and it's a shame that it didn't get recognized in any of the categories it was nominated.
Maybe it's worth just taking a cue from Greta Gerwig herself, who I can't imagine this was performance, because she seemed overjoyed to be there, legitimately thrilled. Her reaction shots were the best of the evening, I would say. She leapt to her feet when she didn't win Best Director. And one way I used to look about the Emmys is the fact that the Emmys, they're insane and they throw out awards to many undeserving people, and it seems almost random. You celebrate when people get invited. That's recognition. It really is. It's hard to remember that sometimes.
That's what Jimmy says at the beginning of the show. He's just like, you guys made it. We're here. Yeah.
I think that what we might remember is that this was the night Jordan Peele went for the first time, Timothée Chalamet arrived for the first time, Greta Gerwig was at the ceremony for the first time, and the first of many times.
Amanda, did Lady Bird, and this comes from Twitter, Zach Packleb asked, did Lady Bird actually deserve any awards that it missed on, or should it have just been happy to be nominated?
It absolutely deserved all the awards. What is this happy to be nominated bullshit? Like, of course. It's a fantastic movie. I think it's perfect. Laurie, I think that there's a real case for Saoirse Ronan. I think that screenplay is really wonderful.
Phenomenal.
I thought it was a pretty perfect movie. I think it is deserving. So are other movies. I don't think that this happy to be nominated stuff. No, like, I want Greta up there. She'll be back, and she will.
It's funny though, because I think Frances McDormand won because people wanted to see Frances McDormand talk, and that proved to be a useful insight. By the same token, I think it would have been fun to watch Greta talk. Watching Greta give acceptance speeches on this tour has been great. I mean, she is genuinely thoughtful and grateful. That you don't usually see that. There's nothing overly measured about it.
Do you think that we got robbed of any other? Was there an acceptance speech out there that should have happened that we didn't get a chance to hear?
I would have loved to have heard Jordan Peele take Best Picture and talk. I mean, I have a sense that he was saving something. He's a great writer, and there was a moment there to deliver.
Yeah, I remember when, I think it was Pulp Fiction, Tarantino went up there and he was like, I'm not going to win again tonight, so I'm going to do my whole bit now. And I wish, it's unfortunate that Jordan didn't get to rip one off there.
I think it's hard to, and I hope no one is making Guillermo del Toro a villain here, because he gave wonderful speeches. He's a very talented filmmaker.
He's a great filmmaker.
But one thing that he said in his speech that sort of pushed me back a little bit is when he said that for anyone out there hoping to make genre films that can express real stories, like, the door's open for you. And I'm like, that door has been wide open for 10 years.
Sure.
Right.
How about people make real stories that don't need fish metaphors? You know what I mean? But for real, because if you look at what he had, my frustration with that movie, and I'm sorry I'm dinging it a lot, he did have a fairly robust budget to create this world. He had a lot of talent, not huge for not Hellboy 2 money.
It's actually fairly cheap by his standards. Yeah.
But he did have a lot of resources. He certainly had an incredible cast. And you look at what he did with it, whereas you look at what Greta Gerwig did with her relatively modest budget, and you look at what Jordan Peele did, and I think those were more impressive feats.
Yeah, it's hard when you're measuring these things. I think I just don't like. There's a lot of moments in Oscar history where people win big awards for, like, their 4th best film, or their 6th best film.
Yeah.
And Guillermo del Toro, I know you guys are not a fan of beasts or creatures of any kind, but he is a master filmmaker, and I think this is, like, at best his 4th best movie. And
name him. Hellboy 2 is good.
I think it would be Devil's Backbone,
Okay.
Pan's
Taking
Labyrinth,
this again? Hello?
My favorite
Keep
part of
going.
Lady Bird is
He won an Oscar. It's
We
fine.
can keep moving. But the point being, you want somebody up there for their very best film. Like, what's exciting about Greta is she's going to make 10 more movies, 20 more
Yeah.
movies.
All
you
about
know?
Sacramento.
Possibly.
Just the first 4, she said.
Right,
and
fair
then
enough.
she might
can I
expand
throw this
to
back
Davis.
on you, just not to get off of Guillermo, because he did win, and he does deserve our respect for that. But do you think that, and this comes from YouTube, Matthew Munhall wants to know, when will PTA win a career-capping Oscar? Would you
Oh.
have been disappointed if he had won tonight? And, like, you know,
No.
What?
I almost feel like I love Phantom Thread, but for him not to have been recognized for some of his other films feels, you know.
I would have been fine with it.
Sure, I know.
I would have. I would have been fine with it. I think
I'm
'cause
just trying to
he-
start the conversation.
I get it. He doesn't yet. He is basically in the place where Guillermo was, I think, in 2007 when Pan's
Oh.
Labyrinth was nominated.
Okay.
Which means we're probably 10 years away from people finally saying, "This guy."
From the when PTA's Tiffany Haddish, Maya Rudolph,
Seriously.
wacky comedy.
wait.
Lethal Weapon 5.
That'd be great. Okay, we're going to do some Oscar superlatives. Hand out a couple of awards for what we thought from tonight. If you guys want to jump in and add your Oscar superlatives, but by all means, hashtag Ringer Oscars. By the way, I'm Chris, this is Amanda, this is Sean, and this is Andy. We're hanging out with you here after an Academy Awards that was mildly surprising for our ballots, but for the most part was what a lot of people expected. So let's talk about some of these Oscar superlatives. You guys just jump on it. Did you have a favorite crowd reaction in Greenwald?
Yeah, I would like to say that I am very pleased to watch Meryl Streep's continuing evolution into the new Jack Nicholson. I think she's reliable for bits. I thought she was great with Tiffany, who said that I'd like her to be my mom. I thought she was great when Jodie Foster suggested that she had been kneecapped by her.
And she
She's always
also,
reliable.
Frances McDormand, when she was trying to get everyone to stand up,
This was
said,
great.
Meryl, if you do it, everyone else will. And then the God bless Meryl got right up,
Always.
and so did everyone else,
Yeah.
which was savvy
so
on both
game.
their parts.
Always
Yeah.
game.
I have
appreciate
to
it.
shout out somebody for best crowd reaction
Okay.
that has been one of my favorite parts of this award season. And you know, a lot of the times we talk so much about awards that these characters start to take on a life of their own within our sort of elitist circle.
Is it Timmy?
No,
Oh.
I gotta say what's up to Leslie Bibb, because it's been
Yeah.
it's been a couple months with Leslie, and you know, she's up there with my wife Amanda Peet as a character thanked from the stage that just makes the most out of that like couple seconds that we get to spend with her every night.
Yeah.
And she had the fortune of just like constantly like kind of being like this over Frances McDormand's shoulder all night. It was just like
To be
me,
fair,
Bibb.
to
And
be
it was
fair,
just
Joe
like a-
Cohen was going the opposite direction, thus creating a
But
void.
for us true Talladega Nights fans,
Yeah.
it's just been amazing to see Bibb on this journey, lapping the competition. So thanks, shout out to her.
So happy for her.
Did you have a favorite crowd reaction?
I enjoyed Jimmy Kimmel trying to get weed from Steven Spielberg.
That was good.
That was useful. And Kate Capshaw just icing him
Yes.
in that moment.
Yeah.
That was pretty good. I think it was maybe like a little, like 5% too much Lin-Manuel Miranda.
Oh, interesting.
I think
Here comes.
He's
here
got to be a
comes.
little cautious.
Are we sure Hamilton is good?
No, I didn't say
Wow.
that. I did not say that. But I think in the run-up to Mary Poppins Returns,
We're
you
gonna
know,
get a
a
lot. of it.
spoonful of sugar, you know? Not a barrel.
Crowd reactions?
Chalamet.
Yeah.
What a year for him. What a
Yeah.
life, really, when you think about it. And he was there a lot, and then of course Army was kind of just over his shoulder, which I enjoyed. But just the open heart, the enthusiasm,
Yeah.
the all white.
We have
Can't wait for
a
him.
special question for you from
Oh,
Frankie
great.
Rodriguez.
Okay.
How does Amanda feel about Army Hammer with the hot dog cannon? And we can talk about the most memeable moments.
Frankie,
from
thank
that.
you so much for asking. It's a complicated situation. It's not kind of what I would have wanted for him on this night. You know, it's not where on the list. It's not what I would have written myself. I thought he looked quite good. I
Yeah.
just really have to say it. And when he and Gal Gadot were presenting together, as everyone here will attest,
She
I was
peaked.
quite
Yeah.
overwhelmed.
That was the-
and I wish them well. And he sold it. He did the best he could with the material, which is all you can say of an actor.
Red velvet tuxedo
It
is
was-
virtually impossible to pull off. Just keep that in mind.
Yeah, but not on that man.
He
Would
did
you
a great
rather be
job.
buried in a red velvet tuxedo or the Mahershala full black joint
Yes.
that's just like almost a turtleneck but has a collar?
I can't pull off either of those things because, like, if you take the red velvet, you probably look like a movie usher, and if you take the all black, you look like you're a pallbearer.
yeah.
And so you don't really
You're
want to be
looking right at me.
Yeah.
Can I throw a hypothetical? What if you just take the sleeves up a little bit on both of them?
I know.
Yeah.
Peg
Right.
sleeves
Get
are
some
going to be so
sunglasses
huge.
going, some shell toes.
Greenwald, who did you think was the best dressed?
Lupita.
I know you're just like, who?
Lupita.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
I've had that answer locked and loaded
I was
for
just
2.5
shocked.
hours.
Yeah, thank you.
Good pick.
Come on, she looked incredible. Love the glasses. Big night for glasses, Chris. How'd you feel about that?
Oh, it was great. It was lovely to see so many people just embracing their faulty vision. It's not a big deal. You know? Neither is being a 71-year-old short animated director.
Oscar winner.
Yeah.
By the way, lead with that.
Who did you think was the best dressed? Maya?
Yeah, besides Maya, Maya's my number one. I think you really have to hand it to all the men in Velvet. There was a real Velvet moment, and it's very hard for me to personally resist.
Even Michael Strahan in Grey Velvet on the Tree Show. I didn't think that was working so well.
Well, everyone's trying. It's Oscar night. We're doing our best.
Sean, sartorial expert that you are.
I saw some fellow who won one of the technical categories was wearing a midnight blue tux, peak lapel, black lapels. That was dynamite. I don't know who that gent was. I got to track him down. Not a fan of the bro with the man bun who won Best Live Action Short Film.
Those two kids seemed like they were
home,
like way too hot to just be making live action.
They
shorts.
seem like paid actors. No disrespect to their craft. I'm sure they're wonderful filmmakers, but
they seemed like the kind of people who had like a GoPro vlog about all the cool places they visit.
did they thank Indiegogo? I think they did.
Did they?
Yeah.
Who did you think was the most prepared?
Well, that's a tough question because I think generally every nominee, every winner was prepared. They had all expected to win. I think that maybe, I guess what I would say is Jordan Peele, because I don't think he was expected to win. I think he certainly had a puncher's chance. And in his moment, he was probably holding back a little bit, but he was pointed, concise, and moving and appropriate. I thought he did a really good job. Everyone else had way too much time to prepare.
Anybody else that you felt like was exceptionally well prepared?
I thought Rockwell really landed the moment.
He did a nice
I mean,
job.
we've talked. Frances McDormand and Rockwell both have done this a lot. I really hadn't enjoyed any of Frances McDormand's speeches until now, and she should get credit. I was moved by that. But Rockwell really, he had clearly thought about it and knew what he wanted to say, but also managed to make it be in the moment and emotional. And I guess it was like Leslie Bibb crying a lot.
Not to steal a bit from Dan Le Batard, but can we throw up a poll about, do you think Frances McDormand actually likes snowboarding?
That's a really good question. I think that's really...
do you think, or was she like, does this sound cool?
You're doing the Lord's work tonight. Do you think she was searching hashtag
I'm sure
memes
that
for what's
someone
trending?
was like, "Hey, Fran, watch this," and she's like, "Wow, that's cool," and then does
And
this
then
for a
she was
minute,
just like,
and then was like,
add that
"I'm
in
gonna,
there.
write
after,
that down."
Okay.
Sure.
Is she writing everything longhand? Is that your vibe?
That's right.
It's like a Bic pen, just a dream?
Biggest surprise. It was a night of very few surprises. Is there any surprises here?
Yes, a huge surprise.
Great.
Oh.
Awesome.
Are we saying Blade Runner 2049? Are we all doing
Pat,
that?
can we get up a poll?
Because I don't know anybody who's been doing that.
That was a surprise.
Yeah.
By the way, subcategory on that.
Oh, wow.
Blade Runner 2049 being a multiple Oscar winner.
Yeah.
I really like that movie. I remain surprised that Roger Deakins on his 14th nomination.
With the vibes
for
of
this-
a drug dealer at Monmouth.
Well, let's
Wait,
come to
hold
that.
on. I have a related
But
surprise, which is just how good Roger Deakins looks in formal wear. I was not aware.
I'm going to set you up for that. I just
Yeah.
want to say, I don't know why he was the favorite going in. He certainly has deserved it for 13 other times. And I like that movie. That movie did not do well by any standard, and did not seem to be in the memory. Yet it won 2 Oscars, and it got him the award that has long eluded him.
It's not a powerhouse category this year. I think there were a couple of people that had already won before. Obviously, Rachel Morrison's nomination was historic, but I think a lot of people, I wouldn't be shocked if she was nominated for Black Panther next year.
Absolutely.
I mean, she's also at the beginning of a huge career. He's just the classic "it's time" guy. Where the number of nominations pile up and you just give it to them for their most recent work once enough people have been saying, God, how does he not have one yet?
Yeah, that was an incredible. The amount of movies, you could really have yourself something of a film education from the last 20 years just by watching Roger Deakins films that didn't win Oscars.
Yeah.
Thankfully, we don't have to be displeased about him losing, but let's talk about what we were displeased about tonight. Do you have anything that's sticking in your craw?
Well, it was really long. It was. I know that Sean's like, it's always this long. It's not always a full
Good
4
Sean.
hours, and it felt the lack of surprises.
Yes.
Just felt. It was very long, and then at the very end, my hopes were let down. I got my hopes up. I really did think Get Out was going to win. I was excited about Get Out winning. I thought that would be a fun moment, and that did not happen. And we are the No Creatures corner, so.
I know.
Eh.
Tough night for us. What about you?
I really wanted Johnny Greenwood to win for Phantom Thread. And Alexandre Desplat is a very gifted composer who already has an Oscar, and this is not his best work. And that I should have known when that happened that the Shape of Water moment was coming.
Also, it just like shows the scope of Johnny Greenwood's abilities. Like, it's not atonal, full of glass stuff from There Will Be Blood. It's just this
beautiful,
lush, romantic
moving,
music.
yeah.
It's so,
Bach,
yeah, it's gorgeous. What about you? Most displeased?
Yeah, I mean, I just wish that there had been more jolts of electricity and surprise. You know, Tiffany Haddish was great. That was a great moment. Frances McDormand was great. But, you know, you're right, Sean. I mean, this is not a show for cinephiles. This is a show not just for Americans, but for people who like to watch entertaining TV that's unpredictable in an age when we can usually just watch things whenever we want. And so this is the time we are all watching, like the Super Bowl when the Eagles won. I don't know if you remember that, Sean. You were there.
Did that happen?
It's true. That happened.
Philadelphia?
From the Philadelphia Eagles.
wow.
I think we were
Yeah,
all in the
I've
same
heard of
room. That
them.
was a good moment. Just wanted to take a second. But there were not enough of those moments on Tonight of All Nights. And
I'm sorry, I just remembered.
because Nick Foles caught a touchdown pass.
I can't believe this
Crazy.
happened.
Like zoned
What's
out.
the next segment? Should we go to the next segment?
Anyway, I'm bummed out that Shape of Water won. Ultimately, I'm not disappointed that Sam Rockwell and Frances McDormand won for a movie that I detested, because those are worthwhile people and actors who deserve to have won, and people don't remember ultimately.
Right.
In very few cases do they remember
Right.
the particular role that these great actors won their trophies for. But there was opportunity there to not just reward Get Out for its cultural significance, but for the fact that it was a truly great movie in a genre that is often overlooked. The degree of difficulty in that film, I mean, I know I'm the last person to say this, but was just astounding to succeed on so many levels, to so many different people, and to be on that stage. It should have gone over. It would have foretold, I think, really exciting things for not just the future of movies, because that's happening regardless, but I think for the future of the Academy.
My biggest displeasure, and it's really just piggybacking on what you said to open the show, which is this idea that this is still a very opaque process, and it's what Bill was saying, it's what you were saying about, I kind of wish we had a little bit more transparency about how the voting worked, about what people were voting for, about the numbers. Did Shape of Water get 51%? Mm-hmm. Did something else actually, get knocked off, and Shape of Water is the Get Out that we thought Get Out was going to be? So I guess, I love reading about these awards shows, and I love reading about these end of year movies and how we talk about them and how we rank them and how we place them. And I wish there was a little bit more clarity about, so that it didn't feel like we would get to something like this and be like, I don't really understand how this happened.
There is an important point to make, though. The Shape of Water feels like, in the aftermath of Moonlight, like a regression or like a return.
Right, to the
because
artist
in
or
part
something,
because of
yeah.
what Andy's saying, because the movie is
Right.
about movies and it is very self-referential to the history of movies. It's still a really strange movie. I mean, it's really, when you stack it up against the winners over the course of the last 30 years, I mean, we've made the fish sex joke 150 million times at this point, but it is true.
That really
It
happens
is a
in that
very
movie.
peculiar story. And if this were 1987, this conversation would have been about Darkest Hour in the Post, and it's not. And that is something. I think to just glaze over that is to build a narrative of despair that isn't true about what's going on in movies
I
right
think
now.
that's a very good and very fair point. It's just so odd that in a year where people have been talking so much with good reason about representation, that ultimately a sort of twisted romance from the mind of a nerd. I mean, I think Guillermo del Toro would admit that that's who he is. He comes from that culture, that wins. Very personal vision, very odd vision, but it's disappointing.
We have a lot of questions about Shape of Water coming from social, and we're going to take your questions and comments in just a second. It's #RingerOscars if you want to ask us something. There is something I did want to ask the group here, which is, what would we be saying if Three Billboards had won? The Vegas favorite. It was acknowledged for its acting awards. Is Shape of Water almost a kind of consolation prize, so that we are not now having this debate about Three
I
Billboards?
was literally about to say
Yeah.
at least Three Billboards didn't win.
Right.
I mean, that was a real possibility. You picked it, and we would be having a very different conversation. And I think, we all know how Andy feels, and a lot of people feel different ways about that movie, but no one really thinks it's the best. And to your point, Shape of Water is a weird movie about fish sex, which I don't really need, but
Someone did.
at least there is something notable about it, something to talk about. It's not worst case. It's not worst case.
Do you think it would have felt really incongruous if Three Billboards had won?
I think there's a way to stitch it into the narrative.
Sure.
I mean, it's a story about a strong woman seeking revenge.
It's strange.
that
I mean,
is-
there's not a lot of dispute for Rockwell and Francis, right? So, I mean, it would have been an interesting conversation. I think we would have had a very different show had that won.
We would have been crankier. It would have been a little
would have
bit more
flipped the
intense.
tables.
Right.
All right, we want to take some of your questions and hear some of your comments from social media. So, Hasina Alam asks, what do you think a Del Toro Shape of Water win indicates going forward? I'm just going to specify, Oscars change people's careers. Oscars get people more funding, maybe get their personal projects. Now, Guillermo del Toro has always mixed the deeply personal with at least the potential for mass appeal.
Pacific Rim. And
what's next for him? What do you think? Do you think he just continues to make? Is there a dream project for him?
He's making a movie. It's called Nightmare Alley. It's a remake of a movie from the 80s, and it's like pure pulp exploitation genre. It's pure.
He's just
Guillermo del Toro. I mean, his whole career is, can I get enough money to make as big a story as I want to tell? And that doesn't just mean like a sort of financial story. The Shape of Water, in and of itself, $20 million for that movie is a big risk because it's so weird. And he keeps finding ways to compel people. I want to make a gothic romance set in a castle. I want to make a movie where robots fight dragons. I want to make a movie about a demon superhero. Like, he finds ways to do this. So I don't know if this really changes his career because he's already so established, but it does give him the patina of greatness.
Well, here's the question. Does this increase the thinking that I'm sure had already existed, but does this make this more of a pressing issue for film companies to get Rian Johnson, to get Ryan Coogler, to get these people who are doing good work in the biggest tent to do their side projects for them and push them as prestige films? Do you know what I mean? Rian Johnson did Looper.
Del Toro's been flirting with that forever.
Right, but I'm saying that idea of like you take the genre thing and you put the fancy gloss on it, and now suddenly this can be an Oscar movie. Is that what's coming?
It's certainly possible. I think that would be fun, frankly. I think it would be it was so much more fun having Get Out at the Oscars this year, and we've never really had that before. I mean, I guess you could make the case that The Exorcist was sort of like that, or Silence of the Lambs, but even those movies seem more quote-unquote prestigious than Get Out. So it's possible that there'll be a turn to that.
Amanda, Tyler Gary says, I think Get Out will easily be the most remembered film in 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
Bill, our boss, Bill Simmons, we just
Heard
did
of
the
him.
2013 Oscars where we talked a lot about those films 5 years later. In some ways, we're still talking about Zero Dark 30, not necessarily in purely glowing terms, but we were talking about it in a way we're not talking about Argo, right?
That's true.
What do you think we will be talking about 5 years from now, 10 years from now, about what movies from this crowd? Was there even a movie from this year that didn't get recognized for an Oscar that we might be talking about?
Well, I think Tyler's right in that Get Out is the #1 movie. I think we'll be talking about Lady Bird a bit more. I think we will be talking about Phantom Thread. Well, certain people will be talking about. The four of us will be talking about Phantom Thread tomorrow and for the rest of our lives. I think to movies that were nominated, I'm going to do it. I have the floor right now. We'll be talking about Wonder Woman. We'll be talking about Girls Trip. We will be talking about... Yeah, I think there are plenty. I don't know that we'll be talking about Shape of Water that much.
I don't think so. But I think what's interesting about a lot of the movies that you pointed out is it feels like the beginning of a lot of people's stories.
Yeah.
It's the beginning of Gal Gadot's story in a lot of ways. It's a huge moment for Patty Jenkins.
Chalamet.
Timothy Chalamet, huge moment for him. Huge moment for Saoirse Ronan, who was already pretty established but now is like a famous person. So I think that's kind of the key with The Shape of Water. It's just like even Sally Hawkins, who's a wonderful actress, has been nominated before. She's been working in Hollywood and in London for 20 years. So it's just not new. The people that are new are the people that you really cling to.
And that's who we really want, and that's what the Academy really wants in the crowd. They want the new faces in the crowd year after year. We want to be able to look to them, not just to Meryl to react. They need the new blood to be making the work that is worthy of being nominated, yes, but also to be providing these moments that we remember and we talk about going forward.
Anything from this year that you think that we'll be talking about 5-10 years from now that didn't get recognized tonight?
I mean, it was a good year for movies.
Sure.
It was, and I often sound cranky about a lot of these things, but my 3 favorite movies of the year were nominated for Best Picture. I don't remember the last time that happened.
That's true.
In Lady Bird, Get Out, and Phantom Thread. I do think there's no question Get Out is the one that's going to be the most talked about, but I do think the other movies, Lady Bird and Phantom Thread and Call Me By Your Name, are movies that are going to be deeply personal favorites for a lot of people, and they'll carry them with them for a long time.
Okay, well, let's talk about going forward. Let's talk about next year. Let's talk about the 2019 Oscars, because we're at the beginning of a year where we already have at least one movie that we made a whole video about. Maybe Black Panther is going to get nominated for Best Picture. It certainly is got the full attention of the movie-going public in a way that few films actually ever do. Yeah. So 2019, give me a Best Picture nomination. Maybe it's just something you're pulling for. It doesn't have to be a lock to have happen.
Feels almost certain that Widows will be there, which is Steve McQueen's new movie that's coming out in November. That is about a series of widows starring Viola Davis. It's sort of a movie that's by the right studio, that's by the right filmmaker, who has the pedigree. It will fit very neatly into what has been happening in Hollywood over the course of the last 6 months, because it is a revenge story as well. And McQueen is a master and acknowledged as such. So I wouldn't be shocked if it showed up there.
Don't we, and you know this, of course, far better than I do, but don't we have movies this year, new movies from the darlings of last year? Don't we have a new Barry Jenkins movie in Beale Street?
We do.
And Damien Chazelle's First Man, will that be this year?
October.
So I think that'll be interesting to see.
That was one you were really interested
do you
in.
know who's starring in First Man?
Yeah, I do, but I'd rather hear you say it.
2 actors named Ryan Gosling and Claire Foy. It is the year of Claire Foy.
Wow.
I mean, it's been the year of Claire Foy for many years, but I'm looking forward to
Bow
that
to
one.
the crown.
Yeah. I also love a 60s space movie, so.
Has
I'm ready.
anything, Sean, has anything emerged from, I guess we've only had Sundance with other film festivals to come, has anything emerged? Because the weird thing about the way this works is, this time last year, I guess Lady Bird hadn't premiered yet, but
No.
so
That was
obviously there are
right.
movies that will be nominated that we don't know about, but has anything already started to catch fire?
The only one that I can really think of is Sorry to Bother You, which is directed by Boots Riley, who is the MC of The Coup, which stars Lakeith Stanfield, and had a really warm reception, and I think was purchased by Neon, and, it was funded by Annapurna and is rolling out. And there's been a lot of positive conversation about that. Sundance isn't quite even though Get Out and Call Me By Your Name both premiered there, is not quite the Oscar star maker that it once was, though. And so this year
was that
especially.
Whiplash kind of came out of Sundance a couple years ago, but that's one of the last ones that really went wire to wire, right?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Call Me By Your
Yeah.
Name, the narrative started instantaneously, even more so than the Get Out narrative. I feel like when people saw Chalamet, they were like, that kid, best actor, instantaneously. But there are not very many films this year. I'm sure there will be several documentaries that are up for it.
One thing that's worth talking about, and I'm going to remain agnostic as to whether Black Panther will get a nomination or even if it deserves it, but along with Get Out, there is an increasing attention to the way that movies can elevate and excite and exhilarate people beyond what's Thor going to do with only one eye? You know what I mean? Like some sense of collective, like we are all seeing this movie, we're going to go see it, and we're going to talk about it, and it's going to engage us. And I think it's really worth noting that even though Get Out didn't win, we are certainly talking about it more now, and we're going to be talking about it more going forward than The Post, which is fine. The Post is a fine film, but The Post is Oscar bait, and designed as such, and sold as such, and presented as such, and it was a complete afterthought tonight. Which, again, I don't mean any disrespect to it as a movie, but I do think there might be some trend shifting there in terms of what we talk about as an Oscar movie and what we look to as a probable Oscar movie.
The ones that was just going to shout out, I was going to say that I think we might see some Brad Pitt next year. Ad Astra, which is a film by James Gray, it's currently shooting, or I think it's wrapping up now. And typically in the last couple of years, there's been a slot for a prestige space movie, whether it's Gravity, whether it's The Martian. This obviously will probably be a little artier than those two, or maybe a little bit more ponderous, but Brad Pitt as a spaceman, directed by James Gray, I'm there. He's also, I don't know if this is coming out next year or this year.
Once Upon a Time in
Tarantino.
Hollywood.
Is that 19?
Unclear.
Okay, so we might have Once Upon a Time in Hollywood by the end of the year as well. So that's a new Quentin Tarantino film with Leonardo DiCaprio.
Hit into caps.
Yeah, so we'll see. I don't know.
What a time.
What a time. Guys, anything else you want to say to take us out before the end of the Oscars after party? Any closing thoughts?
You've been our spaceman. This is incredible. Yeah. Walking on the moon today.
Do we have to say Oscars 2018? Like, are we really? We're really going to be saying 2000 now.
2018.
2018 AD.
Oh,
Yeah.
Well, that's the twist
Right.
at the end of our movie.
I just want to say thank you to Amanda.
Thank you,
Thank you to
Chris.
Sean and Andy. Thank you to Kobe Bryant for co-directing my film
Yeah.
with me. It
And-
meant a lot.
Congratulations.
I just wanted to say that, dear
Chris.
basketball, you've meant so much to me. No, thank you so much, guys. It was a lot of fun. The 4 hours went by like 5 minutes.
You're the winner tonight.
Talk to you guys tomorrow. Bye.